In the 194th Block Talks, we speak with Kate Baucherel, author and educator, who tells us about her journey from accounting to blockchain education. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. All right, everybody, I'm here with Kate Baucherel, who's going to tell us who she is and what she does with blockchain. Kate, finally, welcome to Block Talks.
Hello, we are here at last. Oh my goodness. So I'm Kate. I do all sorts of things with blockchain. I explain blockchain to people in many, many different ways. So I do CPD for professional institutes. I teach master's students. I do talks at all and every event that's going on, whether that's general tech audience who want to know about emerging tech, or whether that's blockchain specific conferences where we're actually going into deep stuff, or doing 101 for people who just want to understand what's happening. I write things, so I wrote the British Computer Society's Getting Started with Cryptocurrency last year. I wrote an MBA textbook back in 2020 that came out, that's sitting happily on the Harvard catalogue. And I do all sorts of stuff around actually communicating what blockchain actually is, what crypto assets are, why they're important, what they can do, what they can't do, which is also very, very important. I'm a bit of a stickler for, if you haven't got a problem it can solve, why would you, really, honestly? And I also do consultancy, which is where we go, do you really, you say you want a blockchain, so what exactly are you intending to do? Those are all really interesting conversations.
We'll absolutely explore that. But how did you find blockchain the first? What's your earlier background? How did you find blockchain, or blockchain found you? What was the story there?
Oh my goodness. So I'm actually an accountant by training. So I did all my CIMA exams. I'm a fellow of the Institute, and that really helps when I'm doing CPD for accountants, because I know how they think, because I was one for 25 years. So my last CFO role was with a subsidiary of ITV, and I left there in 2010 after the lot of restructuring that had gone on, and kind of found myself with a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, my mother in a home, and no actual way of holding down any sort of full-time accounting job at that point, because it was just, life had got massively in the way. But all the way through my career, so my very first job after I left university, swearing I would never do accounting again, and look how that turned out, was with an IBM business partner in Denver. And so there I was, working on the mighty AS400 before it was rolled out to everybody else. And I was doing what we'd now call, sort of the user interface. I was translating all of the help texts into French. Which meant I was deep into the configuration of the software and all this sort of stuff, because I had a German guy working for me as well, and actually explaining to people we couldn't have a 3-character field for a German word. It's just not going to happen ever. So I was deep into the tech side. So when I came back to the UK and I answered an ad for an accounting trainee, one of the little lines on the ad was it was like a cry for help that said, knowledge of AS400 an advantage. So I got the job, and the first day they signed me up to do my CIMA exams, and then took me down to the IT department so I could explain to them how to work the new computer. And this is a major utility in the UK. But anyway, so all the way through my career, I did the accounts, but I also ran the small business server, or the Unix box, or whatever. So I popped out 2010 with all of this technical knowledge and all of this accounting knowledge. And I was at that point running, I think 2015, I was running a small software company. And we were just at that cusp of jumping, crossing the chasm. We had a really solid client lined up, and she turned around and said, I'm not going to use your software, I'm going to use Ethereum. And I went, what is Ethereum? And so I spun up a parity node on my little PC. It nearly killed it. And went, oh, it's a ledger. Oh, well, that's easy. Everyone else gets this, don't they? And there was just tumbleweed because nobody got it. Nobody got it at all. So since 2015, I've been explaining blockchain to people and watching it grow and watching it evolve and watching it fulfill a huge amount of potential. And so here we are 10 years later, and I'm still explaining blockchain to people. And it's fun.
It's fun. It's fun. I also subscribe to your passion to educate and clarify and use cases for sure. But you were one of the first people, I think, in my LinkedIn network that welcomed me to the UK a couple years ago, 3 years ago, when I moved. And we were lucky to be in multiple conferences together and talk about a number of things. But one of the fond memories I have from being in the UK is going to book launches from friends, and yours is one. So, and I don't think I probed you a lot about this, but how does a book come about, especially in the very particular specialist space you write about?
In the case of the nonfiction that I write, I've been approached every time I've written something like this. So people will come and say, you know how to write and you know the topic. And this was no exception. I simply got a connection straight through on LinkedIn, as I had done for the book that is on the Harvard catalog. So that's a New York publisher. And it's more that I actually write a lot of stuff. So there's an understanding from people that I know what I'm talking about around blockchain and crypto assets, but I can also communicate it well in writing. And the writing that I do the rest of the time, some of it is technical. My very first blog was dreadful. My second one was not quite as bad. So I've been writing things for 15 years, but I also write fiction. So I write stories that involve tech, that involve, I write near future sci-fi, and I chuck everything into the future and see what breaks. And so if I'm able to put a lot of technical detail into fiction for a general audience, then I'm kind of quite well placed to explain things to people about the technology that I do know.
That's interesting because you're combining a passion of yours, writing fiction, to a profession of yours, which is writing about technology and working in technology, which is awesome. In the sense of your writing muscle, what gives you more satisfaction? Is it the fiction thing because you get to exercise, the art of the impossible, I guess, or is it the technical stuff, which then, as far as I understand, opens up another or other avenues for you to work on?
They're both fascinating in their own ways. So for the technical stuff, I have to be quite rigorous about it and very much think like an academic, which I'm not, but I hang around academics because I teach master's students. And I've worked on research projects at the university and so on. So I have to be critical. I have to be able to cite my sources. I have to actually read the papers and understand exactly what's going on. And so that's a really strong discipline. And I enjoy being able to structure the story of the technology in a logical way that means somebody can read it and understand what's going on, rather than just throwing everything onto the first page and going, this all happened. So it's when you're writing nonfiction, you tend to be building the structure very, very early on. So by the time you write the book, you've already got your headings all the way down to about third level, and you're literally filling in the blanks by that stage. And you will find organically it will slightly shift. So some things you'll be like, no, that needs to go in a completely different place. And I'm just going to move that to a different chapter, and I'm going to split these two chapters up. But fundamentally, you've got the structure already. You know what's going into it. Whereas fiction, I know what's happening in Act 1. I have no idea how they're going to get there. I'm I'm currently writing the 6th novel, and literally I'm like, oh, so he does that and bumps into this person and that links, and I had no idea that was going to happen until it happened. So it's a whole different ball game, because your subconscious is coming in and going, you know where you need to get to. The characters are just going to tell you how they get there. Different thing.
To me, it's impressive how very similar disciplines can be this far apart. And I'm not a writer. The reason why I do the podcast and I talk like a maniac is because I can't write to save a life. So I'll keep doing that. Maybe I should tell stories. I don't know. Who knows? In terms of your exploration on the blockchain space over these many years, I mean, we've come a long way. As with you, I started, about a little bit more than 10 years ago, and we've seen a lot of changes from the rawness in which we understood the technology and the way the user experience was and who was interested in that technology and for what ways and use cases, to today where we have stable coins and governments are exploring the ability to maybe issue digital money on those very same platforms. So those who were adamantly against it are now embracing the tech for its righteous purposes. Um, from those years, what were the things that kept you going, encouraging you to continue to explore and study and explain? And what were the things or the moments where you were like, I maybe this is not the thing. Maybe we should just walk away from this. This is nonsensical. Which were those moments?
I think it all comes down to people. Every time it comes down to people. So I was really quite lucky in the very early years, because I discovered. I mean, I'd heard about Bitcoin, but children, parents, all of that sort of stuff. And so 2015, I started fiddling around with crypto. 2016, I went off to my second South by Southwest, so I knew the landscape of Austin by then. I knew the kind of things that went on, and I found the first crypto meetups. I found the people who were developing stuff. I was hanging out with all the people right at the very, very early stages. Even a guy from one of the banks in the US who was looking at all of this. So very early days, and there I met a lot of the gaming people, and there was a lot of excitement, and I think it was the gaming community that really engaged my random nerdish brain, and I ended up speaking at the Blockchain Games Summit in Lyon in 2018 when the Blockchain Game Alliance was formed. So meeting all of these people who were really pushing the edge of what they could do with the technology was absolutely fascinating. So those people brought me through. They showed me, I discovered CryptoKitties. I'd read the ERC-721 and went, oh, this is really interesting. This is all new. This is exciting. Looked at a CryptoKitty, looked at a CryptoPunk and went, CryptoKitty's prettier. I'll buy one of those. That was a mistake. Uh, so it was the people I met and the expertise there. So some of those were absolute OG Bitcoiners who had really been in since the start, and they were generous with their knowledge and with their time and with their friendships, and I absolutely loved it. And then I think the downs is possibly when you start getting the factions of going, Bitcoin is the thing. Well, no, Bitcoin is a thing. Bitcoin is Stephenson's rocket. It started everything off. We wouldn't be here without it. But look at all these other things. And that sort of the factions that grew up, and a lot of there was almost a period where there was a lot of greed. And I'm sitting in a northern town. I'm a trustee of a charity where there's we're getting, beds for kids because they haven't got them, winter coats. And then you're seeing the crypto world. And I really struggled at that point because there was such a gulf between my lived experience and what I was seeing. And now with stablecoins, with the adoption with emerging economies and the opportunities that are opening up, suddenly it's all really positive again.
It's a good segue into my next question, which is use cases. Because use cases are the things that started the podcast and the things that I tend to focus most, which is the actual representation of the value of the technology that we understand and we appreciate and we understand the potential of. In your experience in studying and reading and writing about it and teaching people, what were the use cases that were really compelling? I mean, you just spoke about stablecoins, which I think is a very interesting representative use case, but it's also very financialized. And in crypto, super financialized internet, what are maybe the non-financial use cases you've seen that were enticing and kind of reassured your belief in the potential of the technology?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right about stablecoins, and stablecoins kind of came out of left field very much, and suddenly, I mean, the growth we're seeing now, I think it's 28% year on year, and it's just extraordinary what's going on. So I think I loved the start of the gaming side, even though that really is very, very small. But I liked what people were doing there. I liked the ideas, the inspiration that was coming through in Web3 gaming. I always saw the supply chain ideas as being really key. And this idea that you can start tracing goods across the world. I mean, that really started almost with talking to InsureWave back in 2017, I think. So they started off with tracking cargo hulls, and it was solving a problem with blockchain. It was getting real-time data from multiple parties and opening new data points. And I remember saying to them, oh, you could work out exactly where it is at any time and you could move it around piracy. And that's exactly what they're doing now. And it's just lovely to see. So that part of a supply chain is joined up. And then you see gradually that people solving problems. Actually, I'm going to digress slightly, because the supply chain side I always saw, but I couldn't. The whole idea of when IBM and Musk said, "Oh, we're going to do TradeLens and it's all going to do it," it was too big and too early, and all the really interesting projects were on the ground. So Demuto tracking 1.2 million durian fruit because they could. No, because it opened up. It stopped insurance claims landing on the farmers, and little things solving individual problems that turned into just magnificent examples of use of blockchain for exactly the right purpose. One of the early ones as well was Circular tracking raw materials for EV batteries. And talking to the now president, he's saying, well, we didn't think it would we were struggling with mainstream adoption. We didn't know whether it was going to be adopted. And it's like, it always was going to make it because it solved a problem. And when people realized that the problem was massive, suddenly it gets into, digital product passports and the tracing of the full life cycle of goods and the kind of things that we have to do for sustainability. So supply chains was always a big thing, and just so excited to see how those are maturing.
Everything that had a real complicated data layer that was broken, I think is primarily bound to be improved or disrupted, depending on how you see it, by this. Now, in terms of your students over the years, are there any students that you've seen take on blockchain by the horns and make it their own and implement it and make sure that this live to its potential? Are there any proud teacher stories from your catalog?
Yeah, I don't see them after they've graduated. And because I've only been teaching that course for 4 years now, I haven't yet seen where they're going. But part of the course that I teach, they actually have to come up with their own idea. So, I mean, we talk about the whole problem with AI and essays. And what we actually do in the courses that I teach is we say, we do fintech and full emerging technologies for fintech, and then we do a specific blockchain and cryptocurrency as well. So there's several different cohorts. And we say, go find a problem. Go find a problem that needs solving. Go find a problem that needs solving, and the solution involves multiple parties and transfer of information and transfer of value. Now, do a prototype. I mean, just a smoke and mirrors. Present it as if you're pitching it. And then that's your case study for your essay. So they can't just fling it through ChatGPT. And some of the ideas that have come out of that, because I must have taught, a few hundred students over the last few years. And I think 3 or 4 were from the UK. The vast majority from Nigeria, some from Ghana, from Cameroon, from Kenya, from Zimbabwe, from Sri Lanka, from China, from India, from Pakistan. And they all came up with genuine problems in their lived experience that they then backed up with academic study, and they then proposed a solution. And some of those I would absolutely commercialize. Absolutely. Just brilliant.
We are entering a stage in which there's a lot of excitement because the US administration seems very pro crypto after 4 years of being not neutral, but absolutely against it, to the point where entire businesses disappeared, either passively or actively. And this is exciting at the same time. It is potentially problematic because we've seen the damage of deregulation in other industries, in other periods, and how it is exciting at the beginning, but it is also not that exciting in the medium long term, because then the combination of factors ends up being very toxic. So I'm trying to lure you or guide you into the space of responsible innovation with the advocacy work that you do, the conference and the events that you participate on, and I'm sure you have run-ins with policymakers and regulators. How has this stance evolved over the years, and are you seeing in the scores as you discuss with them the imperatives for this industry? What is the new stance?
This is really, really interesting because I'm actually digging. I've been digging into this in a fair amount of detail because there's so much change at the moment, and it's really interesting. So the influences on regulation are the, you kind of can't see the wood for the trees unless you step back and go, what's actually happening here? And one of the biggest ones is the global standard setters. So it's all very well saying, well, locally in this jurisdiction we do X, and in that jurisdiction we do Y, and come here and set up your blockchain business. But actually, what you've got sitting on top of everything is Financial Action Task Force landing on every country to maximize anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism funding, implementing the travel rule, making sure that we know where money is moving, because we don't want it financing crime. And I'm really happy that crypto not financing crime is a good thing. And then we have the OECD has worked tirelessly for sort of a long time on information exchange for taxation. It's spotted that there is a place where tax is not happening properly. I think there was a fabulous Norwegian study that reckoned through, because they've got transparent tax returns, so they can just reconcile everything. 88% of crypto transactions were not actually declared for tax. So there's the new CARF framework that comes in on the 1st of January next year, where everybody going to have to exchange information about crypto transactions. So those global regulators are having a huge influence, and it's not up to jurisdictions whether they conform or not, because if they don't conform, they're on the grey list. There's sanctions, there's challenges. So that's sitting at the top. And then within that, it's like, how do you interpret it? And the political influence is strong there, really strong, and the economic influence as well. So you look at things like the state of Wyoming put in loads and loads of good crypto law in 2018, 2019, 2020. to attract crypto businesses. And they had their banking license, and so you have Kraken Exchange there and all sorts of things. Same in Europe with Gibraltar and Zug and Malta with their early regulation to actually attract those entrepreneurs and so on. So there's always been that political influence, those economic drivers, and actually what's the structure of your own legal frameworks as well? How do you manage it? So what we're seeing in America is the political influence, but you can't discount all the rest of the frameworks. So they're going to have to still stick to anti-money laundering and so on. The Biden administration was very much responsible development, but there was no legislation for the regulators, so it all became a real mess because they were just going, well, we think this. Oh, you think that? Well, we think this. And then they were all fighting. So it does give it a bit more clarity now, but I think there is too much hype. And when the hype settles, they're still going to have to stick to the global regulation.
No, I hear you. I think there's a word that I heard from some of the policymakers in Europe, which is harmonization. And I'm like, is this the right word? Because the way I think about it is, yes, crypto's global. It forces you to standards in whatever blockchain you're using. But ultimately, builders and users are located and are part of a jurisdiction. And they have different needs and different culture and different economic parameters and social rules. And can we absolutely ignore that and try to harmonize and make everything a unison? Or should we then maybe take this term in the musical sense and let each one be one, but then in harmony with everything else? Because the way this has been pitched, at least in Europe, is harmonizing MiCA, which is the jurisdiction or the multi jurisdictional regulation, but also having, say, just for the sake of example, France criticizing Malta because they're not implementing MiCA the same way that France is implementing, and then therefore they're not harmonized. No, they are, because they're different cultures, they're different social rules, and they're different parameters to everything. And I don't think crypto is the thing that will make everybody the same. I think crypto, because of pseudonymity, anonymity, and hopefully soon privacy, will be ourselves, even on chain, I want to say. So I don't know what your stance is, or how you think about it, but as a fiction writer as well, what is that future like in your mind?
I think it comes back down to the global umbrella. So there are 5 things that you have to do, and say MiCA says you've got to do 10. As long as you do the 5, you're pretty much okay. Because those are the key. So I'm thinking about, for example, the Commonwealth's model law for virtual asset service providers. So they developed a model law that was adopted by the Commonwealth countries, so 2.6 billion people, many of whom are using stablecoins. We've got virtual asset providers in all the tiny countries, and that model law could then be adopted and amended and tailored to the individual country. And I think that's the level of harmonization. These are the things that you've got to do to stay on Santa's good list. So here's a template. Now just adapt it to what your specific circumstances are. And I think that's one part of it that is important. And the other side of it is actually the idea that if you're servicing somebody in Europe and you're based elsewhere, you have to protect them in the same way that you would if you were in Europe. Same with data protection. And that's coming in as well in the UK's new regime, which is going to require people who are servicing the UK to be registered and to adhere to the UK things. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. It's not harmonization, but it's certainly each jurisdiction going back to its core duty, which is protecting its consumers, however well they're doing it.
I can see that. Yeah. Well, also, not to skip the beat, but why not leverage the technology as a regulator? Why treat this as something forbidden to the touch if this has the data that could make you even a better regulator?
Well, I mean that's what OECD are doing to an extent with the CARF, with the reporting framework for tax, is that they can actually, sort of forensically follow anything just like the rest of us can on chain. So I mean, blockchain is a tool. Certainly, I don't think it is being necessarily effectively used. I think there's a lot of regulators who do not understand what the technology actually is and what it can achieve, and they can't see the wood for the trees. It's right back to the same thing. And there's a lot of policymakers who can't, and that's almost a bigger problem because when you've got changes of government and you've got a whole new raft of say MPs in the UK, none of them are coming in with crypto knowledge. What do you do about that? We haven't we have plans to educate them, but it's a tough one.
But it's also about time. I think the era of writing a policy and putting it on a website and on a PDF and expect everybody to follow, these days are counted, because you could implement those on chain, on smart contract logic, for instance. And you could also now implement them on AI agents that run on chain. So, what is preventing the regulators to, just stop staring from the sidelines and actually come in and play the referee in field, in pitch?
That's an interesting one, because you could set up your agentic AI to go, no, you're coming in from the Bahamas and we don't know who you are, so you can go, you can disappear again. You're not touching any of our people there.
Or provide enough proof, zero knowledge proof, that you are who you say you are on chain.
But that comes down to that. Then you start going into the weeds of digital identity. And when you're talking about cultural stuff, try giving a British person an ID card and see what happens. Oh my word!
True. But that speaks about the concern with the data. But if you're abstracting the data away and just sharing the relevant information, which is what zero knowledge proofs do, I think the the conversation changes dramatically, because you can now carry on with your business without necessarily oversharing, and that's the oversharing is always the concern, right? Um, I I've been asking this year. I changed a little bit of the flavor of the kind of the questions, and I'm increasingly more interested to learn what people do to work in blockchain and still keep themselves healthy. So, do you have any secrets, recipes, or routine? What is your approach to that?
I've been doing karate for nearly 28 years now, and so I make it to training. I make it to training at least every Tuesday at the moment, and possibly on Fridays. Not Sunday mornings. I don't wake up in time, but and I've started playing squash again. So I do a lot of sport, which is I'm getting stiffer as I get older, and I'm not happy about that. And I live on physio tape and ibuprofen most of the time, but that's the body and mind thing. I have to be able to step out. I discovered extremely recently that I actually have ADHD, which should not come as a surprise to anybody other than me. And that they actually said that because I've always gone and trained and done something, that's probably what's kept my mental state reasonably balanced. So I go to the gym. I have a PT who drills me through weights, because that's a good thing for a woman of my age to be doing, and so on. And I started playing squash again, so that's actually a lot of fun. So that really keeps me grounded as well, because when you walk into the dojo, no one cares who you are.
They'll beat your ass up, no matter who you are.
Yep, every time.
You onboard a lot of people on onto blockchain, on a crypto or digital assets. do you have a preferred method? I mean, other than the courses, or like if people randomly reach out to you and say, hey, Kate, how do I get started? What's your starting kit?
If somebody, I mean, I need, it depends what they want, but if they're like, I want to get started with crypto, the first thing is you need to learn the difference between self-custody and an exchange. And the best way to do that is, first of all, set up an account on an exchange if you're actually able to, because I know that there's a lot of restrictions at the moment. And the second thing to do is to set up a MetaMask and look at the difference in the onboarding. Start to understand what is happening here. And then I am not going to advise you to do anything because I don't give financial advice, is the third thing. But at least knowing that difference between this is not a bank and this is self-custody and this is the implication of self-custody. That's the starting point.
I like that you're offering the hands-on advice because we're way past the era of having to, I'm going to read about it. Like, just read about it. We could go do that. Go do whatever that is. In terms of the industry, and we spoke about a lot of things, use cases, regulation, etc. But what is the one thing, and one thing only, that if we don't solve right now, we're going to work another 15 years in the industry. We're going to look in hindsight and say, oh, we forgot to fix that thing, and now we're back where we started. So what's that one thing and why?
Ooh, let me just check my mental list and pick the big one. Oh my word. A lot of them are linked. And I think it has to be the user experience. It's got to be. Because even I'm terrified when I transfer coins from one place to another and you're sitting there going, it's been 15 seconds and it hasn't turned up yet. Yeah.
Very familiar with the sweaty hands.
Yeah. Not nice.
Not nice. In terms of tracking you down, learning from you, reading your stuff, what is the path to get to follow your steps, digital steps, and learn from you online? How do people get in touch with you and read your thing?
So I have my own website, which you can find if you type in katebaucherel.com. If you can't spell that, you can try Gallia Digital with one L. Which will also get you to where I am because that's my company name that I've had for like 15 years. And from there, you will be sent out to books and to my little YouTube channel, which is called The Blockchain Hurricane, where I do 2 minutes on whatever question has been asked of me that week. So there's some real classics sitting on there. And I am doing them every week at the moment. So there's lots of new material coming up. So those are the main places. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You may look for me on X, but I am not active on there. You will definitely find me on Blue Sky. So I am around and about. But you can get hold of me straight through my website. There's a little form, and I literally will respond on the spot as soon as I see it.
That's great. Kate, this has been a pleasure to know more about you, your story, your thinking, your frame of mind. And we're very lucky to have you in the industry. Let's continue to educate everybody. See you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDropsPodcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or ZeroX Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the Blockdrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbund Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to Kate for finally allowing us to put this conversation on the record. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird, LFJ.